What's going on, guys? Welcome back to my F1 22 MyTeam career mode. This is part 13, and we are heading towards not a Grand Prix weekend, but actually the beginning of the season break here in our Fantasy 2022 F1 season, and we are going to be setting our activities for our first week heading up into the summer break before we head to Belgium, and Spa-Francorchamps awaits us after the summer break. But this is an opportunity to take some well-deserved time off and try and make the most with what we have in the time that we have available to us. Our R&D chart is actually pretty full at the moment. We do have a couple of things come through, like our DRS activation mechanism comes through, and so with 1500 R&D points, we're going to try and make sure we have something going as soon as possible. Taking a look at this major rear wing downforce, eyeing that up a lot, as we do need to start making some major upgrades to our car if we want to continue to try and build on this young season, our first season here in F1. So we will end up getting that going. That will come quite a few Grand Prix down the line, but it's one of those major upgrades that we absolutely need to get taken care of as soon as possible. But nonetheless, we head forwards and we'll move through time. We get our simulator facility upgrade in as well that we started in a previous episode. So that hopefully will allow Piastri, our teammate, to begin to progress and develop and try and make some strides as we move forward into the summer break. Unfortunately, one of our upgrades we were hoping to get fails, so we're going to have to get that up and going again. Thankfully, it was a relatively cheap upgrade, as we had only a few hundred R&D points to get that restarted, but that will come in time, and we continue to move forward now. As we come up past the summer break, we now get to our Pirelli hot lap of Spa-Francorchamps, and we do actually get a power unit upgrade from our supplier, so that actually is going to come in handy for sure as we move forward onto our wet Pirelli hot lap. Here we see that the wet first turn here at Spa is very tricky when it's your first time out, especially in these supercars, when you're so used to driving around in the Formula One cars. Even in the wet, it can get a little unorthodox when you're in a regular road car, or not even a regular road car, but these supercars for these Pirelli hot laps. So we are going to do our best here to hit that 105 mile per hour average speed as we head up towards Eau Rouge. The very fast uphill left to right. It is a very tricky one. As you can see, we're swirling all over the place. We end up sliding out once again. And so as we head to our third and final attempt here, at least of this set of attempts, we're going to do our best to put it all together. That first turn, as well as getting the power down as we accelerate out of the first corner and trying to make it up through the tight left-right of Eau Rouge as fast as possible, trying to get the power down as soon as possible, try and build up our average speed as much as we can to really buffer forward as much as we can. So we end up taking it slightly more cautiously, and we get immediately back on the power as much as we dare, as much as we can, and try to make our way down the Camel Straight as fast as possible as we slowly tick up, and we end up just getting the gold medal right at the last moment. But nonetheless, that's $100,000 for us and 1,000 driver claim. Wholly welcome. So now, as we finish up our training modules, we'll take a look and see how Piastri is doing, hopefully taking advantage of some of these simulator and personnel upgrades. We actually do manage to get a bit of R&D from Piastri, so hopefully that will continue to increase here as our personnel upgrades and facility upgrades take effect and Piastri gets a bit more experience under his belt. So we'll take a look and see what beneficial, hopefully some very beneficial discounts on the R&D chart we can take advantage as soon as possible. We'll take every advantage and every discount that we can get. But now we head forwards here to Q1, our first round of qualifying here around Spa, and we are doing our best to continue to learn the limits of the car And this is actually a session and a weekend that I actually get to benefit a lot from. So for those of you who do not follow my Twitch stream, I recently picked up a Logitech steering wheel and have been playing around with that actually around Spa, trying to get used to running a actual wheel and pedal setup. So I actually do have quite a bit of experience of running around Spa. This is done on controller as I'm not confident enough yet to run the wheel and pedals full time for this MyTeam series, but we are working on it as quickly as we can. But thankfully it does allow me a lot of track knowledge and a lot of track experience to hopefully take advantage of as best we can here as we finish our first push lap and actually sit currently in P5. Moving forward to our last attempt to get up to the line here in Q1, trying to see if we can get to the opening start finish straight to get another push lap done in the last 20 seconds here, but unfortunately I do not think we'll have enough time. We currently sit in P10, so we are not too worried about falling out of Q1 and moving on to Q2, but it always feels nice to get that one push lap right at the end. And really unfortunately we pushed a little too hard on our pre-push lap, and qualifying will come to a close here with a nice spin out as we near in this final sector. So we will come home, cross the line, and hope that we don't fall too far, but we actually do manage to hold on to P10, and we will move on to Q2. So moving on to our first push lap of Q2, we are hoping to take advantage of all the knowledge and experience gained so far and trying to pay attention to the track evolution. You know, the longer these qualifiers go on, the more rubber it seems gets put down on the track, and the slightly faster and more you can kind of push the limits on these corners. And so we're trying to find the new limits of all these corners, trying to take advantage as best we can and try to put in a good time here and try and make it on to Q3 for I'm really happy that I've decided to move on to the full qualifying, and I think it just adds a lot more excitement to this series, as the short qualifying was also nice because you have multiple attempts over just, you know, the one-shot qualifying. But that said, there's something about the process of trying to make it through the full qualifying sessions, and you can see the drama unfolding every time you finish a lap as we come home and actually sit in P5 right there. And so we move on once again towards our final push lap of what was going to be our final push lap of Q2, but unfortunately our rear end gets a little squirrely out of the final bus stop chicane, and that will do it for us. We do finish in P10 once again, so thankfully we just squeeze in to Q3. Thankfully all our offline experience as well as our car doing just enough here to make it into Q3, and we're going to once again be pushing and trying to find the limits of the car as best we can, but it's going to be a tall task. We have shown that it has been very hard for us to put together a very solid one lap, and every time we seem to get a second lap going, a spin out or a little squirrely rear end usually dooms us. So as we come to the final bus stop chicane here, we round the final corner to put in our first lap. Let's see where we currently sit. It doesn't look too good. We end up in P7. We're going to try as best we can to get out and do another lap as we currently sit in P10, but unfortunately, you know, pushing for that final trip across the line just really does it for us. And unfortunately we run a little wide coming here in sector 2 and break off a part of our wing, and that will pretty much do it for us. We will finish up here in P10, which is probably not too wrong with where our car currently is. Maybe we shouldn't be in Q3 at all. It is noted that I will be adjusting the AI difficulty continuously as we continue to move forward. I'm trying to find the right balance between success and really, you know, we have the worst car on the grid at this point, and I think we are slightly overperforming the current status of our car. But now we head to the Belgian Grand Prix around Spa-Francorchamps.
Victory for the Jordan team back in 1998, and in the same team, the phenomenal debut of a young Michael Schumacher. There's always something special just around one of the many corners of this fan-favourite circuit. Spa-Francorchamps is a 4.35-mile tour of the Ardennes countryside, with 9 rights and 10 lefts, giving us a grand total of 19 corners. Average lap speeds in the dry can reach about 145 miles per hour, but without a significant improvement in the conditions, we're not going to be seeing anything like that today. Off the back of a fantastic qualifying session, it's time to see how our starting grid looks like for today's race. Charles Leclerc lines up on pole position, just ahead of George Russell, who starts this event from P2. As we continue through the rest of the grid today, we have Sainz, Norris, and Sir Lewis Hamilton, and Bottas, Ricciardo, the rookie, Fernando Alonso, and Sergio Perez. They'll be starting further back after an earlier grid penalty. Tsunoda, Verstappen, Kevin Magnussen, and Vettel. Mick Schumacher, Joe, Pierre Gasly, and Esteban Ocon. Albon, Stroll, Oscar Piastri, and Nicholas Latifi. It's almost time for those 5 red lights to go out then. Let's see who can prevail today. Alongside me to discuss all the action today is Anthony Davidson. Thanks for joining us, Ant, and tell me, you were down in the pit lane earlier. How do you think the track conditions are today?
Well, the surface looks clean enough, but I'm a little bit worried about the track temperature. It's pretty cool out there, which could give some teams difficulties when it comes to keeping their tyres in the right operating window. The cars out there that work their tyres hard and really put a lot of energy through them, they'll be the ones that are better off.
And so as we move forward to our formation lap, we see that we are welcomed to a wet day here in Belgium for the Belgian Grand Prix around Spa. And we actually do end up moving up a few positions thanks to some grid penalties. So we will end up starting in P8 here at Spa. And the rain and the wet conditions is very much a double-edged sword for us. We've seen some of our most successful finishes, our most successful outings in our car in the wet, but that has been more due to AI mistakes and trying to take advantage of, you know, the conditions and others not being quite up to snuff here. And so it'll be interesting to see if we can do that again here around Spa. We have a lot of experience both offline and in qualifying trying to make our way around Spa, so it's going to be interesting to see if we can do whatever it takes to make up some positions here at the start and try to use the weather to our advantage. But as the final cars here on the grid line up, unfortunately Piastri actually is up on the back row, so our personnel upgrades don't seem to quite be doing it. But now the grid is set and we are heading to the 5 red lights here in Belgium. And here at Spa, the lights are out and we are away here at Spa-Francorchamps. You can see us kind of making our way down the inside, and we actually make a huge dive down the inside, kind of bumping wheels with Lando Norris here. We actually make our way up into P4 off the jump here. A lot of the cars around us just were not able to get a decent jump. We actually get a good start for once, and we are able to make a huge lunge up from P8, and now we currently run in P4 and holding up the rest of the grid, that's for sure, as the Ferrari makes a dive down the inside here down the Camel Straight. And we'll have the inside here for the second port of this chicane, and we head down towards the right-hander, and we kind of send one a bit deep and get a bit squirrely as the rest of the pack. And we run 3 wide here down this back stretch. Wow, what some crazy racing, as the rest of the grid is currently being held up by me and the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc, I believe it is. And I'm sure they are not appreciating, 1, the front group getting away quite so easily, and 2, the car that is currently listed as worst on the grid kind of jostling and battling with the rest of them, holding them up and potentially trying to ruin the races. We make a big dive down the inside of the Ferrari, trying to continue to put our car in the best position possible to defend our way here around Spa and try and do everything we can to get some heat into these intermediate tires and try to hold on to P4 here as much as we can. As we see the Ferrari's view as he is going to make a run at us here down this back stretch here in this 3rd sector here around Spa. It'll be a tight tight run towards the bus stop chicane. Unfortunately, we kind of squeeze him out just a little too much. He is forced to back out here, and we actually cover off the inside here, kind of park it on the apex as best we can, and try to just continue on as we finish our first of 22 laps here in Belgium. And it actually is not Leclerc, as I mentioned. It was actually the other Scuderia of Carlos Sainz, who is probably extremely frustrated that we held him up quite that much, and now he actually finds himself behind the Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton, and we find ourselves in a Mercedes sandwich currently running in P3, actually not even P4 here on this second lap, in between Hamilton behind and the other Mercedes of George Russell well ahead, a full 6 seconds ahead, that is. And we are going to have a monumental task ahead of us, trying to defend as we come here down out of the final chicane. I think this track reminds me a lot actually of Hungary, where a lot of these sections actually are not that wide, and so it actually is a very difficult for the AI to find those moments of overtaking. It really needs to be on the straights where our car is at a severe disadvantage that they will able to get past. But with these wet conditions, it is very, very difficult for them to kind of get the traction they need out of corners to get those sort of exits that they need to get around. And we are doing a pretty bang on job of placing our car as best we can to defend from a current 7-time world drivers champion in Lewis Hamilton. And it is going to actually go our way for once, as the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz makes his way past the Mercedes and will be on our bumper once again. I have no doubts about it. It is this back stretch here in the third sector here around Spa that gives me the most pause, because it is absolutely where an opportunity as we see here where the Ferrari will absolutely have the legs on us, but we are going to hope to just send one fully down the inside. Unfortunately, we're a little too early on the brakes, and the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz makes his way through our makeshift blockade, and we currently fall down to P4, with now the McLaren of Lando Norris battling with Lewis Hamilton behind us. Hopefully that will slow them up enough that we're able to kind of just get pulled along once again by a Ferrari, by a much faster car than us. So as we now currently stand, P4 it is. And what a start here in Belgium. Not one we could have asked much more of. As we move forward just a single lap here, we find ourselves with a bit of a cushion as we head down this middle sector here. Still currently running in P4, but we will continue to try and build a cushion between us and really try and push for that front group as they continue to try and get away from us. And it's actually at this point that we start to get some inklings that the weather may not be so wet for quite so long. And so this is a moment where we need to start thinking about when we want to try and make a move to potentially cover off the pit stops from other teams to try to, you know, get onto slicks as early as possible, because we know that in the dry, the other cars on the grid are much, much better than us and will definitely have the performance advantage over us. And so we really need to be thinking, we really probably need to be quite daring on our switch onto slicks whenever that does come. As we make our way down here towards the bus stop chicane, we really have to start thinking about when it might be worth rolling the dice. As of right now, it's still pretty wet, even though we were told that the rain will dry up. We have to start thinking about it while also being attacked from behind by the McLaren of Lando Norris. We'll cover off the inside here and try and slow him up as much as we can, back him up into Lewis Hamilton, but he actually gets a great launch around the outside of us here in turn 1. And we are now find ourselves in P5, trying to make our way very daringly up through Eau Rouge, almost side by side with Norris. Thankfully, we probably make the correct decision to wisely back out and concede the position to Norris. And we're also doing our best to limit our ERS use as best we can, as Norris actually runs a bit wide. Unfortunately, a little slide through the corner there. We are unable to be in position like we always try to be to make the move stick. So at this point, Lando has absolutely left us in the dust, and now we find ourselves just here on lap 7 with the 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton behind us. And you can see there that we actually get tapped and actually take a little bit of underbody damage. Nothing too serious as of right now, as we try and squeeze Lewis to the inside, try and compromise his line, try and get through him, but he absolutely does an amazing job of parking his car right on the apex there and not allowing us to perform the switchback that we really tried. So at this point we are kind of in a bit of a panic mode as we have fallen all the way back to P6. I know it still would be an amazing result, and considering we started P8, that is not a bad result, but considering we were at one point in the podium places, we are in a bit of a free fall as we now are under attack from our good old friend Daniel Ricciardo here in the other papaya colored car in the McLaren. And as we can see, that AI speed when they get in some clear air is absolutely bonkers, as Lewis Hamilton has already made up a 2-second deficit ahead of us, and that is going to be something that we are not going to be able to catch. So at this point, every place that we feel like we earned is going to be coming from denying our current place from those behind us. And so we come through here on this 7th lap. We are doing our best to go middle of the road and be able to put our car in position to defend if Daniel Ricciardo were to make a move. Thankfully, I think Sergio Perez comes through and actually distracts him enough where on this back stretch here where most cars are able to catch up, I think it distracts him just enough to not allow him to creep up and cause us any issues here. So as we begin lap 8, we have a long way to go. And moving forward once again here to lap 10, we are really starting to notice the track dry up a little bit. This is a point where anytime I would ask for a weather update, they would say that they weren't sure whether slicks or inters were the fastest tire. And so this is where we really need to start thinking, as we are also now under attack from the Red Bull of Sergio Perez, as we try and leave him just enough space, no more, no less, and he actually ends up backing out of the chicane. Probably, again, a bit wisely, considering it is us, and we are definitely known for making those issues, as a Mick Schumacher out of Belgium, and we have an opportunity as the safety car comes out on lap 10 here. And considering, and you can see here, I'm actually getting the weather report and trying to see if, you know, we can get a lean one way or another if it's become clear that inters might not be the tire anymore. But we also know that we are going to have to potentially make a pit stop soon anyway. Is it at this point that we make the daring decision that I was talking about to try slicks? It still feels very wet, but if the track were to dry out under the safety car and we were only to pit with everyone else, that would really put us in a difficult position here. And you can see here, my mind has been made up, and we are going on to a fresh set of slicks on the medium tire. We will be boxing this lap to put the slicks on. Whether that's the right call or not, we will see very quickly as we make our way through the first turn of the bus stop chicane and make our way straight into the pit lane. And we actually get a bit of panic here. One, as we almost hit the pit wall, and two, as no one pits behind us. And this had my heart racing. We're making an absolute gamble, and I was hoping to get a bit of reassurance that it might be the right call to see other cars pit behind us. But unfortunately for us, as we make our way onto the medium tires, there are no cars pit behind us, and we are left wondering and hoping and praying that this is the right call here, as we are now on our midway point lap here around Spa. And it is now on us to try and get some heat into these medium tires as quickly as possible and hope and pray that this circuit dries out. Thankfully, as we actually make our way to finish lap 11, we can see here that our decision to pit for slicks was absolutely the right call, as it almost the entire rest of the field pits on the following lap, and they will all come out also on slicks. And now we find ourselves right back up in the top 5 running in P4, but all of those ahead of us are still on the intermediate tire. And so if you think about it, we are provisionally leading the Belgian Grand Prix after an amazing call to pit on the first opening safety car lap onto these slicks where we did not have to make the pit stop with the rest of the field. And so as we head here on the bus stop chicane for the restart, you can see that the Ferrari, Alfa Romeo, and Williams all box, and we find ourselves on the restart leading the Belgian Grand Prix here around Spa. And what an absolutely amazing call it was for us to go onto the slicks here, as we get a little overexcited and run very wide out of turn 1. But we find ourselves now leading the Belgian Grand Prix here around Spa, and having an absolute nightmare of a first corner will only either settle the nerves or make them even worse. We're hoping that it is the former, as we find ourselves with the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc behind us, with Valtteri Bottas actually rounding out the podium places here currently, as we're on lap 13 of 22 here around Spa. And our tactics here at this point are exactly like it was in the wet. We only know that we are fighting for positions by defense, not offense. As much as we would love to be able to attack Spa and try and really create a cushion thanks to our car's performance, unfortunately that is just not the case, as we know that any position lost for us is essentially a permanent loss here, as the Ferrari is absolutely attacking for all it's worth, pleading almost with us to let him by, so he can run off into the distance, and we'll place our car as best we can here. This final back stretch here, it will be where it's won or lost, at least when it comes to these Ferrari straight line speed. Thankfully, Bottas actually attacks Leclerc in a bit of weakness. I think after that last attempt by Leclerc, Bottas actually makes the move and gets around him, and we actually have a bit of clean air here as we try our best to get free of the rest of the top places. As we move forward here to lap 16, we actually now find ourselves with George Russell behind us, who has made his way up through the field. He has been on an absolute tear recently here in this fantasy F1 universe, and he is absolutely going to try and give it to us here in this middle sector here around Spa. He actually sends a bit of a kamikaze dive up the inside, and actually just takes me so by surprise that he takes the place. He does exactly what he needed to do, which is just get by me almost at any cost, because he knew that I was going to be putting up as much a fight as possible, as we at this point we're fighting for our first win in Formula One, which is absolutely wild to say here in our first season of this MyTeam career. But unfortunately, we now find ourselves here in P2, fighting off once again now, defending from the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc. And now that DRS actually is enabled at this point, we are doing literally anything we can to stay within DRS range of George Russell here, as he will do wonders for us to try and defend from behind, as we know that Charles will have DRS from us, but we will have it from George, and it'll be that much harder for the Ferrari to overtake. As we move forward here to lap 18, we're running wheel to wheel with a Ferrari into the podium places, trying to do everything we can, trying to be as wide as a bus here around Spa, taking it up the inside, parking it, running it a bit wide, doing everything we can to shut the door as many times as possible on both a Ferrari and a Red Bull in our first season MyTeam car. And it is absolutely insane here as we kind of try and squeeze out Charles Leclerc. We will settle in behind, try and get that slipstream, and we will do whatever it takes. Any imaginary bounds of the track mean nothing to us, as we will send one deep up the inside of the bus stop chicane, really park it in the middle of the track, trying to force them off the gas as much as possible, and it works to a point. And thankfully, we actually also were behind Leclerc in the DRS detection zone, so we were able to get DRS down the opening straight. And now here we find ourselves with 3 laps remaining here around Spa. And we move forward, actually, as thankfully nothing happened here, as we make our way onto lap 21 of 22 here around Spa, still finding ourselves in P2. This has been an absolutely insane weekend of Spa, and I can't help but think that my offline practice of Spa has absolutely helped us here, as I don't believe otherwise we would have been able to do this. That, coupled with our very daring dive into the pit lane off the safety car, thankfully, well, unfortunately for Mick Schumacher, and very thankfully for us, causing that safety car and allowing us to get onto the slicks before everyone else. And at this point, we are praying. We know we are not catching George Russell ahead, as he is more than 5 seconds ahead. We are hoping and praying that Leclerc and Perez and Norris are all fighting enough for the podium places that they will allow us a bit of breathing room here on lap 21 of 22. And we do find ourselves holding off Leclerc from being within DRS range, although that Ferrari will absolutely make up some ground here on this back stretch here in the third sector here around Spa. So we are going to continue to deploy as much ERS as we dare, trying to take good lines, try not to take any curbs unnecessarily, and we are on our way, and almost one lap between us and our first podium of this MyTeam career. And that is an absolutely wild thing to say. I did not believe that that would be something that would happen in our first season, as our car is just so bad compared to the rest of the grid. But we round the bus stop chicane and open up the final lap of Spa-Francorchamps. And only one lap alone separates us from the podium here around Spa. Sure, we could let Leclerc through, not willingly, obviously, but we could concede one position to Leclerc and still make our way onto the podium. But that said, we want second. We want to take home the second step of the podium, as we know we're not getting first with that kamikaze dive by George a few laps ago. But nonetheless, we had fought so hard for this second position. It would be a shame to give it up here on the final lap of the race. We can see that Leclerc is going to do everything in his power to get around our boat of a car, but we are going to do everything in our power to keep that from happening. The real issue is going to be that final stretch of straight all the way up until the bus stop chicane, as the Ferrari will be well above our car in terms of performance, grip, aerodynamics, driver skill, you name it. The Ferrari will have the better overall rating for it, and we are going to have to save every bit of ERS we have left for this final stretch here as we round the final corner onto the most flat out section of this circuit. And Leclerc looks to be taking an outside line. We kind of shut the door as best we can. I'll also point out, if you look at the bottom right, we are currently running an MGU error as well as some ICE malfunctions. And thankfully for us, even though we are dealing with some mechanical issues, we will round the final corner here of the bus stop chicane, down the final stretch, and we will come home to finish P2 on the podium for the first time in this MyTeam series, and we are loving everything about it. The most unlikely of podiums is possible, and we find ourselves an unlikely podium participant here in Belgium, coming off the summer break. Thankfully, a bit of experience around Spa helps us out. Congrats to George Russell on his win, but we don't care about that. We care about that our car parked up and parked firm in P2. We will bring home 18 amazing points for the World Drivers' Championship, as well as the Constructors' Championship. That will be absolutely massive for us, as there it is, our racing suit on the podium with a Mercedes and a Ferrari at the same time. Absolutely incredible feeling. We hope to have many more of these, and we weren't expecting this until next season at the minimum. We will absolutely take one here as we make a daring move under the safety car to pit early for these slicks, and we were able to do just enough defending on the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc and the Red Bull of Sergio Perez as we come home in P2. around Spa. I just can't keep saying it enough. It is absolutely wild. I cannot believe it. As we look at the final standings here, it looks wrong almost to see Mr. Dakota Zero Racing sitting in the P2 position here with 18 points to our name. What an absolutely amazing weekend here around Spa-Francorchamps. Definitely saving that replay, and I actually want to see where Piastri ends up finishing. He actually ends up finishing in P16. A wonderful drive here from the Australian rookie, moving up from P21 at the start to P16. So we know he has a long way to go, as do we. And this is some great progress to see from Piastri here. So, wow. What a day for our club. What a day indeed. As we take a look at the driver standings, we move up into the top 10 and right behind the Alfa Romeo of Valtteri Bottas, and once again in the constructors also moving up over Haas, those 18 points coming in clutch, and we actually only find ourselves 12 points down on Alfa Romeo, currently in P6. So we are going to fight like hell the rest of the way here, and I can't believe we finished with our first podium. We will be celebrating this plenty, but we know there is more work to do going forward. But for now, our first podium is in the bags, and that will do it for this episode of my MyTeam career, and I will see you guys hopefully on the podium again in the next one.